Today we're going to cover the 3 worst exercises for overhead throwing athletes. Exercise number 1 that we hate to see overhead athletes doing, and we tell all the athletes that come into our therapy clinics or come into our training facility to eliminate from their program, is this what I'm going to show you right here. Chest flies. So every time you go like this, the only thing that's holding on is your pecs. If they fatigue and give out, we're looking at some potential subluxations or dislocations of your shoulder. 1. Second of all, when you're in that hyper horizontally abducted position, the ball goes forward in the socket. You're behind the plane of the shoulder, not where we're meant to function back here with a lot of weight, with a lot of load. So your scapula sits generally 30 degrees on an angle on your rib cage, and we're way behind it here. Not very good, especially for throwers who, when they throw and go into external rotation and they go into horizontal abduction, that ball's coming forward in the socket already. Hopefully we're limiting that with good biomechanical sequencing of their throw, but they're already potentially attenuating that anterior capsule. And that anterior labrum is probably getting a little deformed as well. We want to avoid putting our shoulder in a position where that's replicated as much as possible in our training, especially when you can train your pecs in so many other varieties. You don't need this. So that's going to be the first one. The second one is one we see all the time. You'll see it in every major gym you go into. You'll probably see it in most college programs, college baseball programs, where guys are on a bench here or even doing it without touching the ground where they're actually hanging, is a dip. You do it with your legs straight, bent. I see it all the time. What's happening is every time you go down, you're going into hyperextension at the shoulder joint. So once again, the ball's going here, coming forward in the socket, not a position you want your shoulder in. It's not meant to go that high, especially with this much load on it. And now if you're loading it up with plates and other things, not something you're going to want to do, especially if you're a throwing athlete. So it's not very good, guys. It also, if you see when I turn sideways here and go into that position, you see how my shoulders are rounding forward. I'm getting kyphotic. I'm getting hyperextended. I'm getting that computer posture. We're accentuating that and training that posture every time we do a dip. Even when we try to keep our chest forward, all that we're doing is going into more hyperextension at the shoulder. So we do this to avoid that much hyperextension. But then we're training poor posture, kyphotic posture, pec minor dominance, not something we want either. So you don't want anteriorly tilted scapula. You don't want winged scapula that come around, scapular dyskinesis. So we want to avoid this one at all costs. Not an exercise you need. It's not really going to train the triceps as much as you think it will. I'm going to do a lot of the pec in a position that we don't want to train it in. So get rid of that out of your program. So those 2, gone. Now, another common exercise. You've seen this one all the time, guys. Gone. We don't need to be doing it. The problem is, every time you do that upright row, you're putting yourself in an impingement test position. This is a provocative test that as therapists or athletic trainers or doctors, we will sometimes use to test for impingement. You're going into this position, now you're adding load, pulling you more into internal rotation as you go up into hyperabduction. Also, if you're a thrower, you may be familiar with an inverted W too late in the throw, which can be a problem depending on how you sequence it. That's what we're doing every time, except we're using a lot more load than a 5-ounce ball. So not a good position. We're taking that shoulder, rotating it into the socket, pinching against the acromion there, pinching the supraspinatus tendon or the labrum, developing some sort of impingement in there, potentially mechanical impingement. So things we want to totally avoid with our throwing athletes, because it's not necessary. If you're looking to train the deltoid, the posterior delt, the supraspinatus, or even the upper trap somehow with that exercise, things we want to avoid is putting them in positions that could potentially impinge that shoulder. If those are something you want to train, there are much better alternatives. They're going to be much more functional and also are going to avoid poor posture and compression on those internal structures of the shoulder where we're decreasing that subacromial space. So it's not something we want to do ever. Neither is this, and neither is the dip. So just a real quick video today, guys, going through those 3 exercises that we see all the time. We've had athletes specifically referred to us in therapy that have been hurt as a result of doing these exercises and could no longer throw. So we had to tell them they had to abandon these exercises. We gave them some new exercises that they could perform in the gym, especially if they are looking for their beach body, which I know a lot of kids are, especially in the high school, college ages. They want to get bigger pecs. They want the triceps. So there's things that you can do that are still safe. They may not be the most beneficial or specific exercises to your throwing, but they're going to be a lot better than any of these 3. So get rid of them all and get yourself in positions that are safe, where you're maintaining proper posture and avoiding positions that are going to potentially hurt your shoulder. You're already putting a lot of stress on your shoulder when you throw. You don't need to do it in the weight room too.